try and keep this update short, so I know I keep saying, but the work continues, but I'm surprised at my how limited my ability has become to even perform sort of basic tasks like getting this place shipshape. But I've realised, I've realised today I've started embarking on the task of finally, after 2 years of living in this apartment, deregistering my social security number from the kids' address and registering it here so that I can start to claim some of the sort of range of financial benefits that the state provides over here, which is not something that I'm really used to from the UK. I mean, we have a welfare system, but I've only ever really lent on it in emergencies. Whereas over here, it seems that most Danish households, a lot of their income is routinely shored up by these sort of benefits, which is great. I mean, it's what taxes are for, in my opinion. But unfortunately, it's made it even more difficult over the last couple of years, not being able to claim things like housing allowance and various other stuff, or unemployment benefit, things like that. Because obviously the state needs to be able to look at the households that it's claiming so that it can see how many adults there, what the income is, children, the address, that kind of thing. But it's sort of caused me to remember what the initial and most biggest struggle was way back when, which was the sort of battle for my right to be a father to my kids and their right to have me as a father, which is not something I ever thought would be questioned. But I think that the state that I found myself in that first video was really an accumulation of sort of individual misfortunes, which are just stacked upon one another. And the fact that I'm even able now, from the comfort of my own home, to be able to get back to that original difficulty is a privilege that I've been afforded thanks to all of you. So thank you very much. But apart from the fact it's an administrative task, which is just kryptonite for people with ADHD, especially ones that are under stress. And I find myself, my head swims every couple of minutes. It makes me feel dizzy just at the prospect of doing that. But the reason why I haven't deregistered is because way back when I sort of found that I had no choice but to end the relationship, it was met with a very surprising and confusing sort of aggression and it's like a reversal of the victim and offender thing that left me really questioning reality and thinking, hang on a minute, was it me that was the one caught doing this? Anyway, in the earliest days of ending the relationship, I found myself sort of being punished, and my children weaponized, access to the children weaponized. And after having to sort of spend money with lawyers to get to grips with how the system works over here, what it basically comes down to is normally what happens when a parent split up is that what's called a visitation agreement is written and signed, which is a legally binding document with a standard format from the state, which basically outlines very specifically and in great detail things like all holiday dates for the upcoming year and the time and place of pick up and drop off, handover of the kids, and so on. Once that is in place, then the parent that is leaving that address deregisters, and they become what's called a visitation parent. And then when they find a new address, they register their CPR or social security number at the new address. You're supposed to do this, I think, within a month of moving to a new address, or you receive a hefty fine, which is, cheaper than the cost of losing your kids. But it also means that you basically, the so-called resident parent, which is the parent that remains registered at the kid's primary address, then has all the rights. And in fact, they're under a legal obligation to act in what they believe is the children's best interests. So if that parent decides that it's in the children's best interest for them to not see their other parent, their father, then they have the support of the family court system over here to do so, until the family court are brought in to investigate and make a judgment themselves. And of course, that's a process that could take months, lots of money, lots of stress, especially for the kids. Our daughter is of an age now where she would be involved in that, and her sort of opinion sought. And one which usually isn't necessary. I know other parents over here that have been through that, and they find it quite surprising that that would even be necessary in this case. But anyway, it is what it is. But despite doing my best to try and get such an agreement written, it was met with a lot of, again, very confusing, and certainly to me, utterly illogical obfuscation just to get something signed. There were early attempts, but under the advice of lawyers, it was pointed out to me that for example, my ex wrote a first draft, and in the box for holidays, where you write details of who has who during school holidays and stuff, the first draft simply contained the line, something along the lines of, any holidays will be limited to no more than 10 consecutive days, unless, there's any other side agreement. At that time, I had believed that this agreement was for mutual benefit. So there was talk of their mother taking them to Australia one day. I think it's a great idea if she can do that. We met in Australia a few years ago before our son was born. We took a trip to Australia for about a month, which was pretty wonderful. But our son's never seen Australia. So, if their mother is able to do that, I'd be fully in support of that. But I saw what she'd written in the original draft and thought, well, my feedback on that was, okay, the only problem is, what about holidays to Australia? You're going to want more than 10 days, right? Because, it's going to be jet lag and stuff. So I'd suggested a sort of a different wording that was something along the lines of, it could be 14 days or more or something if travel is to Australia or the States or whatever. And bear in mind that I spent many years negotiating quite complicated legal contracts for a living. I like to think it's something I'm quite good at in terms of understanding the drivers and the needs and possible objections of both parties so that you can reach a compromise agreement. But I found myself negotiating, first of all, the concept of negotiating over your kids is just bizarre. But also negotiating with someone who the goalposts or the real, the reasons behind their drivers or objections just kept on changing whenever they were, applied, just brought under any sort of scrutiny. It didn't really hold much logic. And eventually a lawyer told me that actually this agreement is purely for the benefit of the visitation agreement. So it outlines what would be my rights. So actually, the wording of that first draft simply restricted any holidays that I would have with the kids to not just 10 days in a row, but 10 days in a year. And when I pointed this out, the response was, again, just so difficult to negotiate in good faith with someone that you feel is not being entirely open about what their reasons are. But the response was something along the lines of, I've got all of this in writing somewhere. I mean, fortunately, all of our communications since the end of the relationship have been in writing. If they weren't, then I'd swear I'd swear that I would have lost my mind, because it's all so confusing and batshit crazy, basically. But the response then was something like, well, frankly, I don't want to be forced into making a decision out of fear. And but at that stage, I was like, what fear? Like, I'm the one with cause to be fearful. Anyway, at that stage, I just thought, you know what? I'm just gonna, if I remain registered at that address, at least we still have on paper equal footing and equal rights. But that was 2 years ago now. And although I didn't come here to claim benefits, a lot of those benefits which are available to people over here, which are used on a regular basis as part of most household incomes over here, would have come in handy. I mean, even when I still had that last job, it would have meant that although the kids were, okay for food and stuff while we were here, it meant that I could have gone back to having a reasonably healthy diet and wouldn't have had to sort of deal with the shame of telling my kids that when they wanted an ice cream or something when we were out that I couldn't afford it. Anyway, but there's also things like unemployment benefit and housing allowance, and all these things are means tested as well. So it means that they would have fluctuated proportionately to, when I lost that job, and even when I started working, I had some part-time work as a cleaner. So that would have helped, and I think it's time that I need to be able to lean on some of those benefits that people have available to them over here in order to be able to sort of get back to some sort of standard of living. But also, although it's something that I have wanted to avoid for a long time, perhaps it is inevitable. If I do deregister, like I say, it means that in theory, I could be barred from seeing the kids until the family court get involved. But the family court are unable to help with anything like this until there is a visitation parent. So although they have a sort of mediation service, and I did ask for their help way back when, and we had a couple of sort of video call mediation sessions, they were largely useless because the person on the other end was more concerned with how this complete stranger on a video call was perceiving them rather than the issue at hand, which was the kids' well-being and increasingly my deteriorating well-being. Finding yourself being yelled at down the line by the other person as I started to sort of crumble because of the impact it was having on me, that how outrageous it was for me to be complaining after all of the, I can't remember what the words were now, after all of the trauma that I've put her through over the last 10 years, which, I hope that most people seeing this that know me or have, although you never really know, what someone's like outside of their professional life or whatever, I hope that people will find that hard to understand, given that I'm actually a reasonably good-natured person. Anyway, at some point, I think that their mother is obviously going to discover this GoFundMe campaign, and given the lengths that she was prepared to go to when I first ended the relationship to pursue what seemed to be her only priority, which was to contain the potential PR damage to people's perception of her at the expense of my health and the kids. That was when, you know, I had no interest in really talking openly about any of the stuff that happened, because as far as I was concerned, it was a matter between she and I, and that's where it needed to stay. But even though I haven't even gone into particular detail on the GoFundMe campaign, I think once she sees that, you know, there are friends and neighbours and stuff over here that have contributed, that have been very supportive over the last couple of years, God knows how she will react. So anyway, at least then, even though it's a battle that I'd never really wanted, at least then as a visitation parent, the family court will actually be able to come in and help. It just means, you know, a long battle, basically, which is not really good for anyone. But anyway, so it's all sort of hit home today that I'm now back to the original challenge, which is just simply trying to get some security and peace of mind for me and the kids, over my ability to be their father. And that's, yeah. Just taking that first step of deregistering from the address is it's quite a big move, and I try to do it online, but because it's so far out of date of the time frame that it's supposed to be, I've had to call them, and I've sent them. They've said that I can do it by email, but I sent them an email waiting for a response. But even then, I mean, once that's happened. I mean, I was in pieces a minute ago when I was just trying to do that, when I thought it would be quick and do it online. I even recorded a video in the meantime, because I thought I could do with you all being here for moral support, but the video was so long, and the process was inconclusive anyway, because it turns out I have to email them and wait for a response and stuff. But anyway, I think it's hard to describe just how terrifying that step is. But anyway, even being able to get back to a stage of being able to, you know, face beginning that challenge and the fear of it is a gift given to me by all of you. So thank you very much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. But now that's done, I'm waiting for a response. I just need to crack on, really. But it's amazing how reduced my capacity has become over the last few years. You know, I get up and I do start one small task, and then I feel lightheaded and I have to have a lie down, which is just seems so pathetic, really. But I think this is going to take longer than I had anticipated. Anyway, for the kids, right? Anyway, what's that? 19 minutes, Jesus Christ, I'm sorry. Thank you.